This is Under the Radar, Chad. Not the Hoops HD report. This is
give me a second here.
Wrong show, Chad.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the bracket. Champion. Under the radar, Chad. Under the radar. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD. Under the Radar. I am your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by David Griggs down below. John Stalica off to the side there. I
also have to remind you that this is the video podcast. This is not Chad's bi-weekly radio show on WIBG.
Yeah. Chad, why am I never on your weekly radio show?
Because we're a family
except
show,
when I'm a
Dave.
client.
It's a family show, David. It's a family show. We've got FCC on the radio. We don't have that here on the internet.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
This is our Under the Radar podcast where we focus in on the Under the Radar schools. And what we like to do at the start of these podcasts, especially for those of you that may be new to Hoops HD in our post-Super Bowl part of the season here, is define what it means to be under the radar. And David, I'm going to throw that over to you this week. Can you tell everybody out there what it means to be under the radar?
Yes, it means that you are not in a Power 5 league or a multi-bid league. That's the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, Atlantic 10, American, Big East, and West Coast. The Mountain West is now under the radar because for the second straight year, they're not going to get anyone inside the bubble. And you're not ranked in either the AP or the coaches poll.
Correct. And nobody is ranked. And in fact, amazingly, all season, we have not had a under-the-radar team ranked in any of the polls. May change in the next few weeks here with Wichita State starting to toe that line, though.
Yeah. And part of the reason, Chad, is we moved a conference up. Otherwise, Gonzaga and St. Mary's would have been in there all year. So.
Right. Well, we did move. Didn't we do an even trade, though?
Yeah, we did.
We
fair point.
Got West Coast for Mountain West.
Yeah.
John, those two conferences are fairly even, aren't they?
In a manner of speaking.
Not even close, in my opinion. I don't know.
No.
But what we like to do in the show is actually pull up on the screen here the standings in the conferences. So we'll get the screen share going in half a second here. And we like to focus in on one conference every week. And I didn't tell you guys that we were going to do this, so I'll just throw this at you right now. But I randomly chose the Summit League as our conference du jour, our conference of the week, because this has suddenly, David, become a very interesting conference as North Dakota State has lost back-to-back games.
Yeah, they had really opened it up. They lost tonight to South Dakota State of all teams.
Well, they haven't played South Dakota State yet tonight.
Oh,
that game's going on right now.
Well, they have, Chad. It's just that, it's during the show.
Okay. That game is just tipped off. It's like 10-10 in the first half as we record this. But I'll pull the standings up here, David, so you can actually see what they have done is lost to South Dakota over the weekend and at IUPUI last Wednesday.
Yep.
They're actually up 17-10.
Right. Well, they have won the game. By the time you will be watching this, they will have won the game.
Okay. But that is what has happened, though. North Dakota State, which had been rolling through this conference, back-to-back losses, home game with South Dakota State. If they blow this one today, they're going to be tied in the loss column with two teams that I don't think we've even mentioned all season, Denver and South Dakota.
I think we've mentioned Denver briefly as having beaten North Dakota State earlier in the year, but we haven't really touched on South Dakota outside of a couple brief mentions.
Yeah, and South Dakota, they actually are the team that did pick up a win earlier tonight, David. Maybe that's who you're thinking of. They won at Fort Wayne earlier tonight by 11 points.
Yeah, Fort Wayne, who we liked as a front runner coming into the season and more, especially coming in the conference play after how they looked good, not a front runner. In fact, they're definitely not a front runner. But yeah, I got a little bit confused and tried to cover for it, but I still am correct in saying. And I know South Dakota and South Dakota State don't like each other, so way to lead off with a conference, Chad, making friends.
Well, David, here you go. Coming up on Saturday, South Dakota State and South Dakota will be playing each other
right.
in a matchup, though. But probably the bigger matchup here is probably this Denver at North Dakota State game on Saturday.
And Denver, as you mentioned, really coming on strong lately. Saw them over the weekend, and it's the first time I'd really kind of looked at them. And is the absence of Joe Scott finally paying dividends. But look at that. Winners of 4 of their last 5, 6 of their last 8, really making quite a bit of noise in conference after after getting off to, I think it was a 6-8 start, is now 15-9. Really good run for them.
And John, this conference tournament, and then we got to start talking conference tournaments. I think here we're only a couple weeks away from the end of regular season play. Some of these leagues, a conference tournament will be in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, once again, a quote unquote neutral court. We've kind of historically been looking at South Dakota State as one of the favorites just because of the home court. Is it kind of reversed with now South Dakota this year?
Well, if you look at the way it's shaping up, South Dakota and South Dakota State are going to be on one side of the bracket, and North Dakota State, Fort Wayne will be on another side. But I would still say South Dakota, I guess, is the team du jour this year. Could be a favorite to advance to the title game, but don't count out South Dakota State in their recent history.
Well, let's go ahead and go through some of these other conferences here. Let's go back to the beginning here in alphabetical order. And we actually have a new feature here. You can see some teams highlighted in red as we go through these teams. You'll see that for the next few weeks. As teams get eliminated and can no longer win the national championship, they're going to start showing up highlighted in red. You see UMass Lowell there, who is ineligible for the NCAA tournament.
Right.
In red right there, David.
And it's a good thing for Hartford that they are.
And why is that?
Because Hartford's in 9th place.
Okay. Yes, only the top 8 teams make the conference tournament, but that would be everybody without Lowell in there.
Right.
Let's start, though, not at the top, but in the middle, where it happened again.
It did. And this is like what the 8th time in 10 games that the team of the people has just been completely screwed.
David, what happened to them in this game?
Outrageous. In this particular game, they were hosting Albany, and it was just I think what happened was there was confusion from the league office as to what time the game was starting. And, New Hampshire just couldn't get warmed up and couldn't get ready.
Yeah, it ended up being 3 straight losses here. At this point, they still got a shot at that 4 seed and at least getting a home game in the conference tournament. They do have a season split with Albany, but they are probably going to have to win at least 2 games on the road to get that NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, it's looking that way.
And even if they get the home game, they're still on the same side of the America East bracket as Vermont at this point.
And I think we got to mention Vermont here, one of only 6 teams left in the nation that is undefeated within their conference, 21-5. And what a season they really have had, though, David.
They really have. If you can pull them up here, Chad, they've been blowing through the league. I know you can see the power rankings, but this is, I think they're heading towards the 12 or 13 line, and they are a live wire team. They're not going to be easy to beat. If you look at some of their losses, Northeastern kind of has you scratching your head a little, but went to Butler, really competed. I mean, they've looked the part all year.
Yeah.
Went to Houston, not to Houston, but that game against Houston. Went to South Carolina, and South Carolina opened that game up. But other than that, this is a live wire team. They aren't as good as the 4 seeds, obviously, but I think they're good enough to where you can't overlook them.
Well, John, they only have 5 regular season games before the America East tournament. Do you think they're going to win these last 5 here? They've already played their toughest game at Stony Brook.
I mean, you can never overlook the team of the people, but the other tough games they're going to have would be the game at UMBC, which could also trip them up. And there's also their old friend Stony Brook waiting in the season finale.
And we got to talk about what an amazing season for UMBC, a perennial doormat. Had a great non-conference season, but they really have carried it over into the conference season as well. It's 7-3 in 3rd place there.
Yeah, they really have. And some of those losses were really tight, close losses. So they might actually be a little, as good as their record is, it's a few plays away from being even better. And here they are. They have won the conference tournament. I think it was 2007. They won this league, but they have been atrociously set your hair on fire bad ever since then, not just among the worst in the league, but among the worst in the nation. And in just an unbelievable turnaround from last year to this year, It's not. I don't think it's an exaggeration. There's not a single program that's improved more than they have in all of college basketball. Would you say?
I think that's a real good statement. Maybe Rutgers, but
Yeah.
they
Well,
may be
true. Yeah.
group. Uh, uh, Huge game, of course, tomorrow night. John, you already hinted at it. New Hampshire at Vermont. That is actually at 9 p.m. ESPNU national telecast. So, given that there's nothing else of note on tomorrow night in terms of college
Right.
basketball, you're going to want to be watching that, David.
Team of the people. Yes, that's where we'll be. And Vermont at UMBC, kind of a showcase game for UMBC this Sunday.
Well, it's going to be before the big game of UCLA and Oregon, so don't worry about the team of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David, I think you have a fun fact about that other game that's going to be on ESPN. Maybe we'll get to that at the end of the show.
Yeah, end of the show.
Okay. But that's above the radar. Let's go to the Atlantic Sun, where Florida Gulf Coast sitting at 8-1. Almost surprisingly, though, John, Lipscomb here now clearly in second place, only a game behind them.
Well, it's not the first time that we've mentioned Lipscomb has been hanging around behind the Eagles, but USC Upstate has been another surprise this year that's also involved in a three-way tie for third.
Yeah, that's such a huge battle there because the conference is played on the campus sites of the higher seeds. And David, tomorrow night, a lot of good under the radar games tomorrow night. It's going to be a real tough call to see who ends up being our under the radar game of the day. But Lipscomb and Gulf Coast is one of the games tomorrow night.
Yes, and I mean, because of the format of this conference, that's a hugely important game, because if Lipscomb can somehow do it, suddenly they're tied for first place, which means the conference championship game would be at Lipscomb if they continue to hold on and win out. Really good season. I mean, Lipscomb, again, we had talked about them a little bit out of conference, but they were almost winning a lot of games, but not quite winning them. But now they've certainly hit their stride now that conference play has started. I don't like them as much as Gulf Coast. I just think Gulf Coast is the better team, but they're right on their heels.
Well, what Lipscomb really showed me this season was in their two games in the Battle of the Boulevard there against Belmont.
Yeah.
Both heartbreaking 2-point losses back on November 29th and again on December 6th. And this Belmont team hasn't lost a game in the OVC. It's a very good Belmont team.
Oh, it's a real good Belmont team.
They also had a heartbreaking loss at Tennessee State when Tennessee State was playing their best ball of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to be talking much more Tennessee State after that quick mention of them anymore.
Well, we'll mention them briefly later, but we'll get into that.
John, over the big sky, here's another team that will not be winning the national championship. Northern Colorado is on self-imposed sanctions this year. Weaver State's now, though, opened up a 2-game lead in the conference.
Weaver State has opened up a 2-game lead, but also given the format of the conference that started last year, even Southern Utah and Northern Arizona still eligible for March Madness.
Yeah, and David, do you think this is just Weaver State's going to roll the rest of the way here? Is that what we're looking at?
I wouldn't count out Eastern Washington, but it's very possible that Weaver State will just continue. They have so far, ever since league play started, they've pretty much dominated.
Yeah, I got to say, nobody else in this conference has shown me anything that makes me believe in them at this point. David, let me stick with you here in a conference that is way tied up here. And with another one of these huge games I was talking about coming up tomorrow night, with two of these three teams battling head-to-head, Winthrop, Asheville, Liberty, all 10-2, though.
Yeah, and that one's going to be a fun one, Winthrop at Asheville. And again, high stakes because they fixed it. It was broken. They had it right about 10, 15 years ago. They broke it. They went back and fixed it. The number one team hosting the conference tournament. And look at the standings. Like Asheville and Winthrop, probably the two best teams. And, at least as far as you look at the power ratings, although Liberty's right there in the standings, tomorrow could decide it.
Yep, and Liberty's also going to Gardner-Webb, so you can't sleep on that game either, depending on who loses the Winthrop-Asheville second round.
Good point. Let me go ahead, John, and let's move on. Let's keep things rolling here and move on to the Big West. Go ahead. John, I'm just going to let you take this conference.
We do have a slight change at the top, as you may have noticed. UC Davis has now taken over the top spot after UC Irvine had another loss this weekend, and that was at Long Beach State.
UC Davis is the only team above 500 in the league. Well done, Big West.
Against
Really,
D1,
like an unprecedentedly bad year for the Big West.
This is, I don't see how any way the winner of this game does not end up in Dayton. The winner of this tournament does not end in Dayton. It's rare to say especially with the Big West, if their regular season champion wins the conference tournament.
Generally 12-13 line, yeah.
Yeah, this is historically bad. I don't know what happened to this league this year.
I don't either.
David, talk about the other end of the spectrum here, the Colonial. And UNC Wilmington suffered back-to-back defeats, though. We talked about it last week with their loss to William & Mary. Then last Thursday night, hosting College of Charleston, game of the season in the Colonial.
Yeah, and not getting it done at home. They blast Delaware the other night, as you would expect, so I think they got their stride back. But I think that their chances of getting in as an at-large, if they win out, are not zero, but less than 50%. It's just there just isn't enough good on there. They do have a lot of road wins. I think they'll have more road wins by far than anybody else that maybe I mean they might be leading the nation in overall road wins. That's how many they have. But are they of a high enough quality to get them in? If you look at how many Monmouth had last year and didn't get in, you kind of have to think it's not looking good for UNCW. I know the committee's changed.
It's 11 wins away from home if you include road and neutral. It's a very high number.
Yes.
But the major problem for Wilmington here is other teams in the bubble are starting to get very notable wins above the radar, and that's just a thing that Wilmington doesn't have the opportunity to do much of anymore during the regular season.
And that's a good point. We make that point every week that you really can't make yourself better if you're an under-the-radar team. You got to get your wins in November and December, and then you got to avoid hurting yourself pretty much the rest of the way.
I got to pull up another resume here, another profile here, and that's this College of Charleston team. Their losses, UCF, Wake, and Villanova early in the year, at LSU, which is almost an upset loss because how bad LSU has been. The only two games, other games, were Wilmington and a game at Towson in league play, David. I think there is an argument here that if you're going to be talking UNC Wilmington with a win out and losing to Charleston in the conference tournament finals, don't you need to be talking Charleston if they win out and lose to Wilmington in the finals?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly have to look at them. I don't think the committee will take them just because their best overall win falls way short of being a tournament caliber team. But again, look at them. I mean, healthy RPI. If they end up an outright first place team, it's that old adage of like if you're in the RPI top 40 and you're an outright first place team, you're typically in. I don't know what their RPI would be if they win out, but it would have to be pushing 40.
And here is another view of the profile, just kind of broken down by RPI. And you can see they do have a win over Boise State, who could be a conference champion out of them. And they got the win at UNC Wilmington, which is a top 50 win, and no horrible losses.
Right.
Although LSU is starting to look like Missouri Light by SEC standards.
Yeah. But that is their worst loss. I mean, when your worst loss is a road game at LSU, it's not, and you're an under the radar team. That's not a bad loss.
Right.
True.
All right, let's keep things going here and move over to Conference USA.
Speaking of bad losses,
Yeah.
John, what the hell happened to Middle Tennessee against a team that we were ready to put behind some bricks?
Yeah, we thought Middle Tennessee had survived what looked like was going to be their upset scare against UT San Antonio, and they got the win there. But then they went, a few miles west along Interstate 10 and actually ended up losing to one of our favorite coaches, and Tim Floyd at Texas El Paso.
This is unbelievable. UTEP, one of the hotter teams here in the conference, and it does not speak well. I remember, there was a day where Conference USA was sending 4 and 5 teams to the tournament and getting a team in the Final Four. It's now in a situation to where there's a team that's just one game out of second place with an RPI of 300, and that's this Middle Tennessee, that's this UTEP team. But look at what they've done lately, as you saw there. Yeah, there it is. Look at what they've done lately. Winners of 6 of their last 7, including, at Marshall, and a dominant win at Marshall, and then UAB, who had been hot coming into that game, and then Middle Tennessee, who we thought was an at-large bid. It still might be. It still might be.
Before that, 1-1 going into that stretch.
Yeah.
1 win going into that stretch.
And a loss to Maryland Eastern Shore, which
lost to Southeastern Louisiana, lost to Northwestern State at home, lost to Northern Arizona at home.
Yeah.
This was a pathetic team. I don't get it. This is one of the crazier turnarounds I've ever seen a team have mid-season.
Right. So do they make the Sweet 16? Like, do they get in, win the conference tournament, get a 15 seed, then upset a 2, and then beat a 10?
Well, I hear CBI bids will be going up for sale pretty soon.
One other team of quick note here, John. North Texas 0-10, one of 6 teams that remain winless in conference play. They've got the trip to Florida Atlantic and Florida National this week, though. It would be a road win, but they've got a shot to get out of that 0-10 there this week.
True, but even if they lose both, they would still be a long shot for the coveted Centenary Award.
I don't think
they can't. Yeah, they can't get it. Not with 4 wins.
Yeah.
Although UTEP did have a chance, we thought.
Speaking about more upsets, Valparaiso goes to Green Bay this week, John. And what the hell happened?
Honestly, I'm not sure if you really can call that an upset. Not when you're talking about the defending champs in the Green Bay Phoenix.
Oh, because last year's team was playing this year?
Exactly. I mean, granted, Valpo is still half a game ahead.
86-69. It wasn't even a close. It was just blown out of the building.
It made no sense. It was one of the more head scratching moments of the whole week in a week full of head scratching moments. Like, I mean, and they are completely toast. And it really sucks that this conference does it the way that it does, because instead of buying into the semis and playing at home, which they earned last year, and despite what they did last week, still are earning this year, they got to go to Detroit and win it.
And not that Detroit's a challenge, but it's also Oakland's backyard, who is going to be a challenge here.
Correct, yes.
And then there's also one team in my neighborhood in northern Kentucky that also won at Wright State last weekend and also has a major opportunity to help out Valpo because they're hosting Green Bay and Milwaukee this week.
Yeah, and Northern Kentucky really turning it around in their first year.
This is their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament, correct? And they're going to be they're looking like a postseason team, and they're going to have a shot in the Horizon League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the tournament there.
Right. Yeah. Because they're 6-5, but they've played some good games, and on to the Ivy, where I think the dividing line is pretty evident.
Yeah, I think the top 4 teams make the Ivy League tournament in the first year of the Ivy League tournament, and it's almost looking like it's wrapped up already with Princeton, Yale, Harvard, and Columbia being head and shoulders above the other 4 teams.
Yes.
The key game coming up this week actually is I believe Columbia is going to be playing at Princeton. There it is, coming up on Saturday, so that's one to look forward to.
Yeah. For sure.
And Harvard at Yale, I guess, is the other one.
Yeah, that one's always fun. So,
also note there, Penn, another one of those 6 teams that remains winless in conference play. And despite the fact that actually during that 6-game conference losing streak, they stepped out of conference and beat LaSalle. So,
yeah, which Big 5. I mean, they're doing much better in their mythical conference than they are their actual one.
Over in the Metro,
Big 5 is not mythical.
Oh, okay. Neither's the Front Range. It's real.
The Monmouth Hawks got their revenge this week.
Barely. Woo!
Both over St. Peter's and over Rider. The 2 teams they had lost to earlier in the year, they beat them both the second time around. And let's pull up that schedule here. A nice long winning streak ever since January 6th now.
Yeah.
Following a 1-point win and a 5-point win this past week, David.
Yeah, and they had to sweat these out. And as disappointing as those other losses were, they did avenge them. I still don't think it's enough. I think they would be inside the bubble had they picked up that win at South Carolina. But as good as they're going, I think they're on their way to the NIT without the automatic bid. I like this Monmouth team. I think they're as good or can be as good or even better than they were a year ago. They haven't always shown it, but I still just don't think the paper's there.
And thanks to Siena's win over Iona, Monmouth now has a 3-game lead in the Metro Atlantic.
Well, they can't be thinking Siena too much. They actually still have to play Siena twice the rest of the season here, including night at Siena. So,
and possibly a third time. So, in that semifinal game.
And David, again, where's this conference tournament being held?
It's at the Pepsi in Albany, Siena's home court.
Yep.
So they would be basically playing a road game in the semifinals of that tournament because they do it wrong. They do it wrong, Chad.
I agree with you, and I hate agreeing with you. John, Mid-American Conference. Let's throw another upset out there.
Yep, Akron did have a toe stub against a depleted Ohio team, but also managed to survive an upset bid against Ball State earlier in the week.
No, they lost them both.
And the standings should not be showing one loss for Akron.
We definitely
They beat Ball State.
They did beat Ball State. And I'm going to make our
Warren?
good friend Warren Nolan has
Warren.
made his website here. They did pull that out. Let me go to the ESPN breakdown of their schedule here. Please disregard.
Now, again, they only beat him by one. I think he had the score right.
He had the score right. Unfortunately, the result there was wrong. We're going to have to get the take care. They won that game 65-63, in fact.
I think the website may have been distracted by some of Warren's Russian dating sites.
But here is their profile. You can see that they did win that game. Big test at Eastern Michigan coming up here in a couple of days, though.
Yeah, and again, does Akron have it in them? Are they getting kind of bored with their season? They've hit a stretch, and a lot. And I've seen this, and it isn't just them. It's Illinois State certainly against Wichita, but even in the games before that, where a lot of the better under the radar teams are really starting to crash a little bit. Wilmington, Middle, not looking as good as they had up to this point, and I think we're just getting to a point in the season where it just becomes mentally exhausting.
David, the other crazy thing about the Mid-American, unfortunately, they play their conference tournament in Cleveland, but now
we have
second
5 teams.
We have not only have 5 teams tied for second, we have 4 more teams a game behind them. So we have a 9-team battle here within 1 game of each other for second place. It is pure insanity here. And if we were playing this on conference sites, this would be an amazing stretch where we're about to head into.
Yeah, the first round of games is conference sites, though.
That's true.
Well, yeah, but that's just
that's the opening round. So
yeah. I mean, we will have a good battle here for who gets the 3 buys, the second, third, or fourth seeds, though.
Mm-hmm.
But wild how close these standings are after Akron.
Right.
Throw away Miami too. But John, over in the MEAC, NC Central's finally taken sole possession of first place here.
Yep, one of their wins over the past week was against Morgan State, so that was one reason why they were able to get into sole possession of first.
And we do have our one remaining team that has no D1 wins, David, down here at the bottom, 0-22 versus D1. They did pick up a big win over Allen College, though, a non-D1 game this week, North Carolina A&T.
Allen College? I thought that was just somebody named Allen.
Maybe that's what it was.
But no Div 1 wins. We'll get to this later, but they still – you would look at that and think, well, my goodness, how are they not the Centenary frontrunner? But they're not.
What is Centenary War for those that –
It is the award given to the worst team in college basketball, and as reward for their efforts, we actually consider them in our mock selection committee. They are on the board. They are eligible, and we've never had a Centenary team make our field, but every single year they have been the last team eliminated.
Savannah State is on the APR list this year. That's why they're highlighted in red. They are not eligible for the MEAC tournament or the NCAA tournament.
I would like to congratulate the MEAC on being the only conference where no one played a top 300 schedule. Well done.
Oh, no, you're missing it. South Carolina State.
Oh, they did?
235.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Other than that, all right.
Yeah.
John, the Missouri Valley Conference, we thought we had an incredible game we were going to see this weekend with Illinois State and Wichita State. Instead, it ended up being a complete blowout by the Shockers.
And this is one of the reasons why we mentioned Wichita State is, again, on the verge of going above the radar and into the top 25. They just missed the AP poll this week since Xavier got number 25 instead.
And David, we've been talking about some of these metrics a lot, and these are the predictive metrics like the Ken Palm, BPI, and Sagarids. Unbelievable numbers still here for Wichita State. 17th in Ken Palm.
Yeah, those are really high, and it's rare this point in the season, we're a week into February, to where you're still seeing discrepancies like that. I mean, you see them all through November, December, January, but generally speaking, everyone pretty much lands in the same spot. I mean, that's not to say that they're not better in some than others, but it's rare that you would be way outside the field, as like the Ken Palm is indicating there, the KPI, and like on the verge of a protected seed in the power rankings. So I don't know. I don't know if this is going to even out or not, because they don't really play the kinds of teams that they need to really boost their paper any, but their predictive ratings are really high. So who knows what you do with that.
I just had to take a pause here because I have another game on another screen here. Unfortunately, I can't screen share because it's on a different computer here. It's Western Illinois and Oral Roberts because we're talking Summit League. According to the screen I'm watching right now, there's 1 minute and 67 seconds left. I've never seen that before.
Where's the game at?
It's on ESPN3.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, who's the
It's
home
on
team?
Oral Roberts.
It's at, oh, well,
Okay.
then there you go.
So I just had to point it out there. 1 minute and 67 seconds. So congratulations on, I guess that's 2 minutes and 7 seconds left. I doubt that's
Or maybe the scoreboard burned out and they meant to show 1 minute and 87 seconds.
87 seconds, maybe. Okay, but let's keep going on here. Northeast Conference.
The Mount. Oh, boy. I was big on the Blackbirds, and they have not had a good week.
Yeah, let's pull up what LIU Brooklyn, the only team with a winning record, even whether it's overall or against D1, is LIU Brooklyn. But, 4 out of 5, David.
Yeah, and after looking pretty good coming into that stretch, and look at who they're losing it to.
Here's the big one. Central.
Right. So, it's going to come down to the conference tournament, but what looked like was going to be LIU Brooklyn's path to winning it because they would be hosting it is now they are 3 games back of Mount St. Mary's, who is in the driver's seat.
Well,
I think
is in the driver's seat, John, though, but I wanted to pull up their profile here because they also stumbled against the same Central Connecticut team.
Yep, that's why I was saying maybe we should be focusing on Central Connecticut State instead, because they're actually 2 games out of 8th place right now, which is where they need to be to get into the Northeast Conference tournament.
Yeah, and Bryant will lose again, but yeah, they don't take all 10. So.
Oh yeah, only top 8 go. SFPA has suddenly moved into 2nd place. A team that's kind of.
Yeah,
the hottest team in the conference recently after Mount's loss.
Yeah, Daniel Marshall's the coach at Central Connecticut, is he not?
Yes, he is.
Okay. He's had a hell of a week. Good job. Probably the best week they've had since they made the tournament.
We actually skipped a conference. Could go back and grab it right now, and that's the Mountain West. And John, I know this is one of your favorite leagues out there, so I'm going to let you take this one here.
Yep, I even got to, stay up late last night and check out San Jose State, actually knocking off San Diego State to get into a 3-way tie for 6th place, which actually puts San Jose State, believe it or not, at 500 in Division I play.
And Dave, we were talking about teams with amazing turnarounds. Maybe this one needs to be listed on that grouping as well.
Yeah, as much as that just made my head hurt. You know how we just gave an analysis of San Jose moving into 6th place. This was a train wreck of a program. Not that they're having a good year, but they're having an exponentially better year than what we've ever seen. And they won at New Mexico. The idea that this team could beat an NIT team under any circumstance, much less on the road, which New Mexico is probably heading there. They are. I mean, you've got to give them credit for going from sub 300 as out of 350 teams to being somewhat mediocre.
John, what about the top of the standings here? Nevada and Boise State. Do you think either one of them still has a chance, should they win out to the conference finals, to get in that at-large picture?
Nope, that ship has long since sailed for an at-large bid this year for the Mountain West.
Even with a Nevada team that only has 5 losses and has a 39 RPI, if they win out, they'll be, what David said, an outright first-place finisher with a top 40 RPI.
Well, getting swept by Fresno State is not going to help this year. I'm sorry, Nevada.
What's their best win?
Their best win is at New Mexico.
Or at Boise was pretty good. They blasted Boise.
The 2 Fresno losses, the loss at Utah State, the Iona loss, those are rough.
Yeah, if you didn't see that New Mexico game, it was utterly amazing.
Okay, let's get the standings back up here, and let's go ahead and keep going here on to let's find out what conference is up next. That would be the Ohio Valley Conference.
Yep.
And the Belmont Bruins, who are now 11-0, one of that small group of undefeated teams, and 17-4 overall.
Yep. Real good year for them. Conference tournament not on their home court like it should be, but in their home city. And they've just looked heads and tails better than everyone else. Some teams have competed with them, but for the most part, they're the best team. Morehead State, Sean Woods leaves for slugging a player in 8-3 and got a nice win tonight. I think they won.
Yeah, I don't think this was updated after that game. Let's go ahead and pull up the standings there, though. They did pick up the nice overtime win by 1 point against their arch rivals Murray State in front of a crowd of dozens.
Yeah, like we're used to seeing the arena full for the Murray Morehead game. No one out tonight at Morehead State. Things must have gotten so bad with Sean Woods they don't realize that they're in second place.
Yeah, and the standings are updated for that game. And John, with the West Division champion will get the 2 seed, even if Morehead finishes with a better record than them. And UT Martin is now moving into first place there.
Yeah, they move into the number 2 seed, but the one team that we actually had the most discussion about after we went off the air Monday night was actually SIU Edwardsville, because we thought at that point they were actually going to be the first team off of the survival board for failing to be able to advance to the conference tournament.
Yes. And I did highlight 3 games here coming up tomorrow night. One is Belmont's game. The other 2, should Edwardsville lose at home to SEMO, or should Tennessee State win at Tennessee Tech, David, it is going to become official.
Yes, and we need to make an apology. We had some confusion the other night. It was just an oversight. For about 30 minutes, I think, SIU Edwardsville had been removed from the survival board. We corrected the problem. I want to apologize to the selection committee for any confusion that may have caused. Edwardsville's fans, I'm sure they were logging on and were like, what the hell? Are we out already? They're not.
Well, and the other problem here, though, David, is, as we know, coming up on Saturday at 12:30, the selection committee is going to be revealing its current top 16 teams.
Yes.
It's meeting since Tuesday to go over that, and there is a chance that maybe they did not see Edwardsville as a NCAA tournament potential winner.
Right. Now, they're not italicized, but they're on the board, like they've not been eliminated.
And as a result, John, on that top 16 list, Edwardsville could have been there, and they may not be, and it may be our fault. So we really need to apologize to their fans.
Yeah, because suppose they had won all of their non-conference games but failed to make their conference tournament. How would that have been treated?
Well, no, but no, with the record as it is right now, I mean, they could have been there, and instead we're going to see something like Cincinnati there in number 16.
Right.
So anybody, when you look at the number 16 team that comes out on Saturday, remember, it's them or Edwardsville.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and, John, let's take a look over here at the Patriot League, where Bucknell suffered a loss tonight.
Well, it's the only team that they've lost to so far in the Patriot League this year, and that's the Lehigh Mountain Hawks. Lehigh, we thought, was a team that could also contend for the Patriots, and they still can win the conference tournaments, assuming they're able to get to Bucknell in either a semifinal or the conference championship game. But Bucknell still has a pretty healthy lead as far as the regular season goes.
Yeah, best numbers. Bucknell should have home court all the way through. How about Navy all the way up in second place?
Navy up in second place there, pending BU's results tonight, which it was not up. I did not have when we started the show tonight.
And Navy has not been this high since, I want to say, 2000 when Don DeVoe was coaching there.
They finished second. I want to say it was either 07 or 08. I forget. But,
also,
yeah.
a nice battle here. Battle here between Loyola, Colgate, and Holy Cross. The loser of this battle, seventh place, will have to play an extra game in the conference tournament. So
Right. Yeah.
that's something else to look forward to. The other three, I think, are locked in for those
Yeah.
first round games already. David, over in the Southern Conference, where there they are. You guys did not want to believe me last week when I started talking about
I did
Furman.
not.
Sole
I did.
possession of first place for them Paladins.
Yep. That's amazing.
Isn't this the same team that made that amazing run in the conference tournament? Was it last year?
Yeah, as a 10th place team.
Yep.
And almost won the conference
I
tournament.
think that was 2 years ago.
I believe it was
Yeah.
2 years ago, yeah. But there they are, 16-8 overall. A game up on East Tennessee State, Chattanooga, a game and a half up, John, on your Greensboro team, which I think hopefully you've finally given up on.
Well, I've given up on them for the time being, but I still think there's a decent chance they can win the SoCon tournament. But hard to overlook Furman in their 6 straight wins here.
Yeah, but they've beaten, like, you talk about the two teams that we like in this league. You know, they have the win against East Tennessee State, and
They won at
You know,
Greensboro there.
and they won at Greensboro.
And
They
they
have
get Chattanooga
twice remaining, I think.
No,
once.
they lost Chattanooga the first
Oh,
time
okay,
around.
yeah.
But talk about all these under-the-radar games tomorrow night. One of them is this Chattanooga at Furman game, so
Yeah.
I want to take a look at.
Mhm.
Furman actually with a real interesting week here. Over the next 7 days, they have 4 games. Thursday, they play again. Saturday, hosting Sanford. Monday, they're at VMI. And next week, Wednesday, they're at Western Carolina. So very busy week and a weird quirk of the SoCon scheduling.
Right, yeah. You kind of wonder how it worked out that way.
And then the other team that's quietly in the top tier is also the Wofford Terriers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move over to the Southland Conference, and we now have a tie for first, actually, between Sam Houston and New Orleans. David, Stephen F. Austin came back, but also a game back in the loss column. The Lamar Cardinals.
Yeah. Pat Knight, you.
He's no longer there.
Yes, I know he's no longer there, but they won the conference tournament when he was there, and it was after one of the best rants I've ever seen. And then Stephen F. Austin pretty much did not lose for the rest of eternity. But, yeah, Lamar kind of getting hot here. And
They're hosting
Just-
Sam Houston tomorrow night, so another one of those big games tomorrow night.
right, and because this conference doesn't do it right anymore, it doesn't mean that much. But they do have double buys, so.
Yeah, I
do
think
they?
speaking
Yes.
of eliminations, it is also possible that a team that beat Boston College will not even qualify for the Southland tournament this year.
Yeah, if it was right now, Nicholls State would not be in the Southland tournament. They have a win over BC this year.
And how good is the Southland? Because their worst team, I think, is undefeated against the ACC.
They could be the worst team. They have a shot at last place, definitely.
Yeah.
The SWAC, whose second place team is on the APR ban list.
And nobody else. Good year for the SWAC. Only one.
Texas Southern there, but this is where we watch. We don't even want to really talk about Texas Southern being in first
Right.
place. We want to talk about the bottom of the SWAC and the case that can be made that a team with not only a D1 win but a road D1 win may be the worst team in the nation. David,
Yeah, worst in the RPI, worst in the strength of schedule, which is just unbelievable. Somehow 352 in the KPI, even though there's only 351 teams. He somehow, what does he do? Every Div 2 team that plays a Div 1 team, he calculates it as a team.
Yeah, all non D1 teams are considered a single team
Yes.
and have like this record of like 5 and 105 or something.
Yeah, but yet whatever it is, it's they're ahead of Alabama A&M.
Yes.
Really, like surging in the SOR there.
The strength of resume, it is a 7-way tie for 345th for dead last. But
Okay.
they are in a tie for dead last. They're not outright. And the big move here, over in the adjusted defense at KenPom, they finally dropped it to last place. So that they dropped a notch there off of where they had been last week.
What the one I don't understand is the 325 of luck. Like, does that suggest that they're as bad as they are because of bad luck?
I think that they were incredibly. I think it was actually good luck that they won that one game, right, John?
Yeah, if we want to go back to adjusted offense, when does Alabama A&M play Arkansas Pine Bluff? Because Pine Bluff would actually be 351 right now, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah.
Yes, you are reading correctly, and we can go ahead and pull that up here. They're done with Pine Bluff. They just lost them for the second time over the weekend. On Monday night. So never again, John.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
3-game road trip coming up. Probably the most winnable game left is the February 25th against Prairie View at home. So kind of circle that one.
What about Texas Southern?
If they beat Texas Southern, yeah.
If they beat Texas Southern, it's going to.
I mean, they overlooked Mississippi Valley and got bit.
Yeah.
John, we already talked about the Southern League. That's where we started the show off. So let's turn over to the Sun Belt, where we still have all hell breaking loose in terms of the conference standings.
Oh, we still have the 3-way tie that's now involving Arkansas State, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State now getting in the mix with Texas Arlington a game and a half behind after beating Texas State, I believe.
Yeah, and the team with the best power ratings, mostly based on a win at St. Mary's, is the fourth place team. That's a game back in the loss column.
Yeah, Georgia State really kicking it into gear here. They had their moments out of conference, but couldn't quite get a big win. The most notable one was that loss at Purdue, where I think they blew like an 18-point lead or whatever it was.
Gave up 20 unanswered points in the final 8 minutes.
Well, they did have the win at Middle Tennessee that we've been harping on at Middle Tennessee being a bad home loss, and maybe it's getting a little better for Middle Tennessee.
Right, but I mean that is a great string of wins that they've put together, and I mean they're as hot as anyone in this league. And I forget the format, Chad. I know it's a predetermined site, but is it standard seating or is it the double buy-in of the semis?
No, it is. They changed the format for this year.
Yes.
They expanded with Coastal Carolina. It's still being played at Lakefront Arena down in New Orleans, but it is a standard formatted,
So no ladder.
All 12 teams invited, including Louisiana Monroe and Appy State.
Yeah, but I mean the top four by the time this tournament gets down to the semis, if all the chalk holds, any one of those four teams are capable of doing quite a bit of damage to someone in the NCAA tournament. Or I don't know, they could really make life miserable for someone in the round of 64.
I am probably going to tell you, as long as one of those four teams win it, my bracket will probably have that team winning their first round game. And I don't care which one it is.
I guess one of the other things I've also noticed here, it seems like 3 out of the bottom 10 luck teams are also in the Sun Belt. Troy, Louisiana Monroe, and hot Appalachian State.
Okay, John, you're going on mute. That's it. Right. John said hot. He's been muted. So, David, big game coming up Saturday, though. Arkansas State and Arlington, two of these top teams matching up.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's big for Arlington because Arkansas State has a little bit of a cushion. But in this format, the standard seeding, if Arlington loses that, they're losing their grip on even getting a bye.
Yeah.
So big game for them. Coastal Carolina turning it around a little bit. I know that's not the big game you mentioned, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
They're hosting Georgia State and Georgia Southern this week, so they do have a couple big games, actually.
Yeah.
All right. John, I'll bring it back in here. We move on to the WAC. And New Mexico State, undefeated in conference play.
Undefeated, and I believe it was Bakersfield who also got a big win at Grand Canyon last week. So they're still well within second place and still within hair shot of catching New Mexico State.
Well, David, this is the week for New Mexico State. Their two toughest conference games back-to-back, tomorrow night and then Saturday, at
Yeah.
Bakersfield, at Grand Canyon.
And it is. And if they win both of them, they will basically have run away from the league. There will be, I think, 4 games remaining, and they'll have a 2-game lead. Or they could lose both of them and fall out of first place entirely. I really like this New Mexico State team. The committee will not consider them, at least not to the point to where I think they would actually get in. They've never really taken a team like this to where the majority of their wins are against sub-200 teams. UT Arlington, or I'm sorry, Stephen F. Austin got as high as the 12 line, but I don't think they ever put SFA inside the bubble. I think we decided they weren't.
Right. Well, and then you got to remember that if New Mexico State needs an at-large bid, they will have lost. Even if they finish the regular season undefeated, they will have lost in the conference tournament to one of these seven teams. Actually, can't be Greg Cade, to one of the other 6
Right.
teams. Maybe if it's Bakersfield, it's just outside of the top 100. If it's anybody else, it's a very, very bad loss.
It is, and it's real unfortunate because if they run the table, they will essentially have failed to do what they've already done twice. So, but there's no pass for it. And to me, it's like, well, if you lose to a team in the conference tournament that you finished ahead of in the standings and beat twice, you shouldn't be dinged for it. But that's just my own philosophy, and they haven't really done enough anyway to warrant being in the committee's eyes.
And if they do win every game until the conference tournament final and lose their overall record would be 30-3. That is now 3 of those are non-D1 wins. So you're looking at 27-3 against D1. That would be a historically best record not to make the tournament.
I would probably draw some comparisons to Utah State in the past.
Yeah, was it Robert Morris 1 year won 27 and didn't get in? I think that's the record.
Murray State, but
who was it?
I thought it was Murray State, but one of those teams.
Murray State, yeah, I forgot. That was and that's a much more recent case. Yeah. Murray State won 28 or 29 and didn't get in, but shouldn't have.
And New Mexico State actually getting votes in both the polls, and they could be top 25 by the end of the season if they keep winning.
They might be.
Let's go ahead and pull that down here. And the one remaining thing that we like to do during the Under the Radar shows is reveal our Under the Radar top 10 list. Now, this is a consensus list. What we do is all 3 of us submit our current top 10 list of Under the Radar schools. We then I do a cross-country scoring of them, and we come up with our results. So if I can pull that back up here. And David, what do you think of our board so far?
I agree with it so far. And
number 1
is the team of the people. Yes. Again, for the second straight week.
We have never seen a number 1 team in the Under the Radar top 10
miss the tournament.
That did not get an automatic bid, miss the tournament. So their chances are really good, John, aren't they?
Yep. I think. Now, wait a minute. You said all 3 of us. Don't you mean all 4 of us? Do you mean the Puppets intern didn't get to vote in the poll this week?
No,
I have
the
an
Puppets
intern
does not get to vote.
It's more authentic. Just like the coaches poll, I have an assistant do it.
Yeah. 1B team is Wichita State. I don't think that's any surprise here. I think it was probably unanimous. And number 2 overall came in that Middle Tennessee team that we are still high on despite that UTEP loss. And number 3, we don't see. There they are. UNC Wilmington still in there, the top 3. And this was pretty much, maybe the order was different between a couple of us, but pretty much consensus on these 3 teams.
Yeah.
Beyond that is when things got a little crazy. And the team that actually all 3 of us voted as number 5, but by the scoring got number 4, ends up being that New Mexico State team we just discussed.
Mm-hmm. And again, like them, but they just don't have the wins on their profile.
Coming in at number 6 is nobody. There it is. The Monmouth Hawks. I'm sorry, at number 5 is the Monmouth Hawks. David, you were not very high on Monmouth this week for some reason.
I like them all right. I just didn't like them as a lot of the other teams. Okay. I don't think that they're as good as that. I could make a case for them to be here if I really had to. I'm not that too disappointed that they're this high.
Well, it seems like everyone seems to be. Oh,
Yeah, I had Akron pretty high. I think I
Yeah,
had them fourth.
Yep, John. There's an Akron team, and John, coming in number 7, John, is a team you did not even have in your votes here, and I need you to explain why you didn't have them. Did you just overlook them, or?
I still haven't really given Charleston much thought, but I'm still giving, I guess, Illinois State a little more love as far as other at-large teams would go.
I like this Charleston profile better than Illinois State. David, would you agree with me?
I do too, and I like their team better. I was big on Illinois State until about a week or two ago. They were winning, but they were winning. They just didn't look good against teams that weren't very good. And then Saturday against a good team, they looked awful.
Number 8 is that Valpo team that we discussed, despite the loss, still making the top 10 list. Coming at 9, still undefeated in their conference, is Vermont. I think this is about where they were last week. They're still hanging in there. And at number 10 is that Illinois State team, John. I don't agree with this. You're the one that had them high enough to actually boost them over the team that David and I
Belmont
in there.
Really?
David, you and I both thought Belmont belonged. John's very high rating of Illinois State bounced the Bruins down to the honorable mention category. Also, honorable mentions going out to Arkansas State, Texas Arlington, and I'm the only one that voted for them, and I think they deserve a spot in the top 10, and you two need to start paying attention to the Princeton Tigers here.
I've been paying attention to them. That's why they're not in my top 10.
Okay, fair enough. On that note, let me go ahead and pull this down here, and I want to run through each of you. Any other final thoughts for the evening? John, let me start with you.
Well, if you can see my tagline right here, Princeton spoiled the party last night, winning at Penn, which was actually the 90th birthday of the Palestra, which opened up in 1927, has hosted many Big Five games, the occasional NCAA tournament game, and for many years also had national championship banners for both LaSalle and Villanova when they were still playing their Big Five games there.
So congratulations to the Palestra. It's an incredible place to see a game. Our colleague Lee Del Vecchio and I went to see the Penn-Princeton game there last year, which was a real exciting overtime game as well. But David, any other thoughts from you?
Running through these every week like we do, it's just, especially at this point, the Big South, the Northeast Conference, which I know isn't as tight as it normally is, but the conferences, the ASUN being another one, the conferences that don't do it at a predetermined site have a very different feel, especially in the latter half of the season. It makes it much more exciting. Some of the games tomorrow, like that we mentioned, those are big deals because if Lipscomb can get it done tomorrow, they're in the driver's seat. It just adds more stakes to the season, and I think it adds for a better tournament because the atmosphere is better. It's not at some random location in the middle of nowhere that's half empty. It's a full arena. The fans, the students, they're all excited to have it there. I wish all the under-the-radar conferences would go to that model. But having said that, we are less than 3 weeks away, and it goes so fast. You realize we only got 2 more of these, and then we're on every night. But as we go through the championship week notebooks, but we only have 2 more under the radars this year.
Wow. Yeah, you are correct. We'll have 2 more under the radars, but we will be back. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow night with one of our bracket rundown shows. Next week with a full week of shows. But before we get to that, David, instead of my final thought, I'm going to let you take my final thought as well because we teased this earlier. There is a huge on-the-radar game coming up tomorrow night, and you did find out a very important statistic about this game coming up at 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Yes, it's a Duke in North Carolina, and I actually got on MapQuest, and it turns out, guess how close these 2 schools are?
What, a couple hours?
No, they're 8 miles apart. They're just 8 miles apart. And I was checking Wikipedia today. So that's the first find. I was checking Wikipedia today, going back through all the NCAA tournaments. John Stalika actually posted a thing about naming the national champions, and I don't think these 2 teams have ever met in the NCAA tournament, Duke and North Carolina.
Well, John, you're our history buff, have they?
Not in the NCAA tournament, but they have met in the NIT tournament during the 70s.
Oh, there's a little breaking news. Oh,
I can't wait to drop that one on Twitter. Yeah.
On behalf of John Salika and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the games. If you are within 8 miles of Duke or North Carolina, you can get a chance to see a game tomorrow night if you can get a ticket.
Yeah.
But again, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again real soon.